Good afternoon. I'm Yomika Bennett, Executive Director of the New York Charter Schools Association. Welcome to our monthly webinar. I'm joined by Anna Hall, CEO, Northeast Charter Schools Network, David Frank, Executive Director of the Charter Schools Office at NYSID, Ralph Rossi, General Counsel for the SUNY Charter Schools Institute, standing in for Susie today, Lori Hazley, Senior Director, Charter Authorizing and Accountability at New York City DOE, Aaron Cochran, Managing Director, Policy and Operations at New York City DOE, and Corey Callahan, General Counsel and VP of Legal Policy at the New York City Charter School Center. We'll start with a few updates and announcements from the association. Then we'll turn it over to the authorizers in New York City DOE and the Charter Center for their updates. If you have questions, please put them in the chat, and we'll answer them following the updates. Starting yesterday, September 13th, schools should have resumed daily reporting to the New York State School COVID Report Card website. The daily school survey and all existing login information for each school remain the same. New York State Department of Health has said they are planning a webinar for schools on the portal and as well as the new guidance. We will share details about the webinar as soon as it becomes available. As you know, state and local agencies have provided updates and guidance to schools to begin the year, information on how the testing program is being implemented, as well as information on potential funding for schools to support the testing is being dropped in chat. I will add that New York State Department of Health and New York State Association of County Health Officials strongly encourage schools to reach out to their local departments of health to let them know about their testing plans and more, and seek them out as partners in what you're developing and what you're rolling out. They are eager, I am told, to be partners with schools. Additional guidance documents prepared by Department of Health and New York State Education Department are available in our new resource center. You can access these documents along with other toolkits and resources about COVID-19 by clicking on the link in the chat. Speaking of our new resource center, to better serve you and your school communities, the association has launched a new and improved version of our website along with the resource center, where schools can access an exclusive library of documents, websites, links, all kinds of resources. School leaders and staff can access the Resource Center and set up a member profile by clicking on the link we are dropping in the chat. As always, you can find all the information related to the association using the URL dropped in the chat. We're excited to remind schools about our annual statewide New York Charter Schools Conference that will take place both virtually and in person this year on October 20th through the 22nd. The in-person portion of the conference will begin on October 21st and through 22nd. It will be held at the Brooklyn Bridge Marriott in New York City. Please note that in-person attendees will need to provide proof of vaccination and will be tested before entering the conference. An announcement on the logistics for these COVID-19 safety protocols will be going out soon. Look for that. You can learn more and register for the conference by clicking on the links we're dropping in the chat. With the start of the new school year comes setting up your data collection and reporting systems. Our data working group will be holding a September monthly meeting on Tuesday, September 28th at 8 a.m. We will be joined by Lori Hazard from Monroe BOCES, who will be discussing some of the new student-level data being collected for the Digital Equity Survey, and Tracy Davey from Eastern Suffolk BOCES to discuss daily attendance reporting updates. We encourage charter school personnel who handle data and reporting to attend these meetings to get updates and share best practices. You can register for the sessions by clicking on the link that we're dropping in the chat. That's it for the association updates. Now we'll turn it over to the authorizers in New York City DOE and the Charter Center for the updates. Hi, David. We'll start with you. Do you have any updates?
Hi, Yomika, and it's so good to see everyone. I hope the start of the new school year is going well, and every time I feel like we start a new school year, I say this school year will be nothing like we've seen before, but we have seen this before, and most of your schools have done just a phenomenal job last academic year in creating in-person and hybrid opportunities for students to learn, grow, and thrive. And we're looking for you to capitalize on that experience and just do great things for this academic year, particularly supporting students social emotionally and of course, academically. So thank you for everything you do for our kids. I just have a few brief updates. I just wholeheartedly would endorse any data staff to participate in the data working group. We just think it's an invaluable resource, and having the opportunity to connect with two of these great staff members from RICS, from the Regional Information Centers, is just a opportunity that you should not pass up. So thank you to the association for facilitating that. We're also, Janet Klein, who's my wonderful data analyst, is coordinating a data reporting webinar in partnership with our information reporting services team, and that'll be in late September. And so you should get information on that in the coming days, and that'll be coming from Janet Klein. And also Board of Regents authorized charter schools. The deadline to upload your school calendar is tomorrow, and you can do that through the SED portal. So please remember to do that. Partially through the advocacy of your advocacy organizations, the state did approve additional open meeting law flexibilities. We've gotten a lot of questions about the applicability of those flexibilities to charter schools. We reached out to the executive to confirm, and I can let you know that that these open meeting law flexibilities do apply to charter schools. So certainly you should make use of them. And those flexibilities are the opportunity to continue to hold meetings remotely, if you so choose, through January 15th of 2022. Again, this does apply to charter schools. Those are all the updates I have, and I'll turn it back to you, Yumika.
Great, thank you. I'm going to turn it over now. Lori, do you have any updates?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. I also hope that your school years are off to a strong start. My only update is just a reminder that for DOE authorized charter schools, there is a reporting deadline coming up for October 1. So it's a variety of documents that you should already have. So you can check CHIP. These should all be submitted through CHIP, the Charter Information Portal. It's an October 1 deadline, and feel free to reach out to me if any questions.
Great, thanks, Lori. Hi, Ralph, do you have an update?
Yes, good afternoon. It's good to see so many familiar faces. We have a couple of reminders. One is just, and I think it's been brought up before, but just for reminder's sake, that daily attendance reporting, which initially came into effect, I guess, last December, was for the whole school year, which is every student every day in the mode. That needs to be done for funding likely again, so didn't want to let people forget about that. Also, for ARP ESSER application funds, there was an extension of the deadline from, what was the original deadline, August 31st until September 30th to get the plan for mitigating learning loss with the use of the ARP ESSER funds to NYSED. So that has been extended, and a reminder that the funds have expiration dates and any plan needs to reflect sustainability beyond the funding period, so that schools shouldn't make any new long-term hiring commitments that can't be sustained once the funds expire. And Barb Achnauer on our team would be happy to help any SUNY schools that have questions about that. I don't know if David had any information on that. We're going to have a couple of asks at SUNY. I don't have them now going forward. So one is we're probably going to be sending out about a 30 question meant to be a quick survey designed to get critical information on reopening, instructional modalities, vaccinations, enrollment, etc. We know people are busy. We know this is a very frenetic time of year. So we're trying to get a short survey without people having to complete a report or update any plans or anything like that. We intend for multi-school ed corps to be able to just let the ed corp answer it, not go school by school, which can save some time. We're hoping it would only take about 20 minutes to 30 minutes to complete. So that's sort of one future reporting item. The other one may be an ongoing item, even though schools report to the DOH or portal every week. As an authorizer, we often don't have any idea how many positive COVID cases, staff, or students are in your schools, and how many students are actually being quarantined. So we may be asking for a snapshot of that on maybe a weekly basis. We need to work that out and get information out on that as well. There's been a lot of information in the press, and the problem is much of it's cumulative. So if you looked at some of what was reported, you would say, oh, 20% of this network's classes have been disturbed by COVID, but that's over an entire period of time from when they started instruction to date. So we don't have that slice of on a given week where we are in the sector. And so we might want to look at that for our portfolio of schools. So I think those are the updates. Besides, we'll probably get questions on the health issues in the city and statewide if they're brought up.
All right, great. Thank you, Ralph. Hi, Corey, Aaron. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Aaron, did you want me to start or do you want to start?
I just have two quick updates. Good afternoon, everyone. So just a reminder that we're holding per pupil training on the 20th. So we definitely encourage folks to attend that, especially any new folks that will be helping with your invoicing process. And then additionally, if you have requested to be part of the DOE's student COVID testing program, you should be working at this point with the vendor to set up that testing. You will also need to have completed the survey that was on page 3 of the FAQ document that you received so that we have the additional information needed to set up things with the vendor. We did have a few folks reach out this week to make that request, so you should be hearing from the vendor in the next couple of days. Those are my updates.
Great. So we've had kind of a busy day here in New York City, if people have been paying attention. Prior to today, there was a vaccine mandate order written by the Department of Health Commissioner regarding DOE buildings, which did cover schools in co-located space. This morning, the mayor announced during a press conference that this order was being extended to also affect all staff in charters in private space. So we have yet to see the order posted. So we are waiting to see the exact language, but we have been told it should look similar to the first order that is covering the DOE and those charters in co-located space, particularly with respect to the September 27th deadline of that's when all staff who are in the buildings need to have their first dose of the vaccine. So we've heard from a lot of you this afternoon and expect to hear more. I'm actually shocked that the chat has not blown up with questions. So I will just say this. I think that charter schools are subject to the same health and safety requirements as public schools. I don't think anyone on this call would dispute that vaccine and COVID are related to health and safety of students. With that being said, I know there are questions particularly about the operationalizing of this mandate. What does it mean for schools to be in compliance on September 27th? What does September 28th look like if you haven't gotten all of your staff to get that first shot of the vaccine? These are all totally fair, good questions. There is more to come. We are working actively with the city to answer these questions. We will get them to you. We will hold sessions. We're working. I know some of you have already set up review panels with doing medical and religious, accommodation checks if folks are wanting those. We will hold a session next week to go over those again, so schools will have support. So we hear you. You can obviously reach out if you have questions, but we are working on this, and I will just say there is more to come. And we will gather you shortly once we have some more information. And I think that's all I have for announcements.
All right, great. Thanks, Corey. And I'm going to turn it over to you. Do we have questions in the chat that haven't been answered? I think we have a couple.
Yeah, I think two from Stacy. So Stacy, you can totally feel free to unmute and participate. This is the beauty of this forum. So one of her questions is if clarifying who is a visitor. My understanding is that that's anyone who's not a staff member or a student, period. Anyone have any different understanding?
Yeah, so I'm not sure what the new order will say, but there is a definition of visitors in the existing DOHMH order. And so again, not knowing what the upcoming order will look like, but there are certain groups of folks that are exempted from visitor status. For instance, a FedEx driver dropping something off in the office, or a parent who has to complete paperwork that cannot be done online, and things like that. So I think we're still getting a sense of what the extent of that is. So there are a lot of nuanced questions that we're getting that we're still working on. But I think in general, it's someone just coming into the building to do something quickly may not be considered a visitor, but someone coming in for a long time may be considered a visitor.
And I will unmute because it's easier than typing so fast. Hi, everybody. Nice to see everybody. So my question too has to do with, the parents, obviously. And so, if there or grandma coming to get the pre-K student, if she's a visitor. And then the follow-up is, once we get clarification on that, are we asking for your Excelsior pass, your vaccination card? Are we like the restaurants, give me your license and your card? I mean, what are we doing so we can direct staff as to how to check for that?
I can take the parent one, and then maybe, Erin, maybe you want to talk about process. So if I just posted in the chat, a link to the order, I see the question from Luann about when do we expect the one for charters and private space. I think we're hoping today, given it was announced this morning, and a compliance deadline of September 27th. But still have not seen it posted yet. Stacy, when you see visitor, you see it does not include. So I've been referring schools a lot to B, who are conducting student registration or for other purposes identified by DOE as essential to student education and I'd be able to complete it remotely. So you tell me if you can fit your parent picking up a pre-K kid under that. I think, again, you're not the DOE, but I think there is flexibility for parents needing to come into the building for stuff that has to happen in person, such as pickup. So I would take that. I know DOE is working on more of an FAQ style stuff to have that, but that's what I've been directing schools to who have had questions about parent access right now and needing to be vaccinated.
Stacey,
I think that's right, Corey. Oh yeah, sorry. I think that's right, Corey, and we're continuing to look into some of those nuanced cases because I'm sure that everyone can come up with a couple where it's not quite clear that it's educationally required or something like that. And then I think to the point about operationalizing it, that's one of the questions that we're continuing to look into.
And then Stacy also had a question about what the city's policy is on accommodations. And so Stacy, I don't know if that's just to get sort of a benchmark versus an expectation that Corey and I were having a conversation about this offline before the webinar started in terms of what even the expectations are among DOA, because it seems like there's some recent either litigation or arbitration that has had
it's twofold. It's a benchmark just to understand what they're doing, and but it's also for Renaissance or Renaissance One, where it has a different issue that we have to kind of follow. But it's also a benchmark, I mean, just to know what's going on and in different situations, because but we've had some pretty interesting conversations. I mean, with people, and want to be able to just see what other people are doing. And I know that DOE has mentioned that, they would, after the arbitration, they would let somebody stay and move them into central. Well, like, we don't have a central. There's no central. You're either teaching or we don't really need you. There's no other position to put you into. So that's not something we could do at either school, truthfully. So, just wondering where that fits in, and maybe it doesn't at all, and because we can't do it, we just can't do it. We have to take the heat for for Renaissance, and Ren 2 just does what it needs to do also. But
yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, this is something that I think, you know, there's been webinars on it and something we'll go into next week, but, you know, part of the analysis about the accommodations is the hardship on the school, right? And so clearly there's a different analysis to be done on the district of, you know, New York City versus a small charter school. Stacey, your situation is obviously complicated by the union and, you know, all of that stuff. But I think that, you know, there are schools, I know schools on this call who are doing this analysis for accommodations. And sometimes the hardship is what is actually shifting it to a no, we can't make the accommodation. And that means that, you know, the person is being denied the request. Having a process to consider, you know, a medical or religious accommodation doesn't necessarily mean that they get it, right? Like, I think that, you know, that's part of this. So look, this is a live issue. I think the union thing is, you know, not done, sure, right? Like, there's going to be continued follow-up. And, you know, we will continue. You know, I know I won't put Erin on the spot and make her be the expert of the UFT where things stand right now. But obviously, this is something we're watching very closely, and we'll, you know, share more with you as we think that there are benchmarks that can help schools as they are doing their own processes in this. Even though it obviously is slightly different, it's really a different factual pattern, you know, for most of the charters on this call.
Agree. Just adding, we've heard this from a number of schools, so it's definitely one of the questions that we're continuing to get details on.
Awesome. So question about the open meeting law. Will there be requirements? And so I would tee this up for David, Ralph, Corey, Yomika, anyone with words of wisdom. Will there be requirements to hold any in-person events also virtually to ensure full parent access, i.e. parent-teacher conferences? So just by quick way of like preface to folks' answers on this, you know, open meeting law is specifically designed to address open meetings that are for, you know, public or government entities, not necessarily things like parent-teacher conferences. So I think that there are probably a lot of, you know, important considerations for your school community and best practices, but no law per se that is going to dictate those things unless there were new executive orders that limited in-person gatherings that would implicate forums like that. Ralph, David, Corey, any thoughts? Yomika?
Yeah, I was going to take a little different approach. So if you're in a building and you can't have unvaccinated visitors, you will have to make some accommodations. Obviously at the CSE level for parent meetings, we'll have to hold them virtually. If they can't go into a DOE space, the IDA has to be fulfilled. The parents have to have access. So that's definitely going to be an issue. Another one would be suspension hearings, expulsion hearings. If the parents can't come into the building, if the school's not going to rent a space or have a space outside of a DOE building, and that may be changing, then you're going to have that arranged, you know, electronically, including for the attorney. I see Matt Del Forte and others are on, that may be entitled to attend for an expulsion hearing for a long-term suspension. So those will have to be fulfilled virtually. The school won't be able to say, well, you can't come in, so, you know, you're barred.
Thank you for that clarification. And Erin, Nina, I'm sorry for your clarification of your question as well. Totally different lens, absolutely. So another question, is anyone aware of any clear guidance regarding wearing masks outdoors for students during recess? My understanding is that the CDC does not include that in their guidance, but I don't know if there are other reputable resources that folks are aware of that address that more specifically.
Yeah, the CDC does address that in the guidance and says that the outdoor masks are optional. I don't have a link right now to the guidance. I'll find one. If someone has one handy, you can drop that in there, and you will see there is information on the outdoor use during recess of masks for kids.
Corey, do you want to put the big boots on and wade in, or?
Thanks, Ralph. So I think Erin might have been unmuting herself to say, there is currently a DOE policy out there that says that DOE buildings, you need to be wearing a mask outside. This is something that we've asked for clarification on for charters in co-located space, because we do not see that requirement in the State Department of Health guidelines for charters, in private space, having to wear masks if you're outside your building. So we've asked for clarification as to where the DOE stands for charters in co-located space.
And I don't think we've seen it in the orders from the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene.
It's not a health order yet. Yeah.
So we'd have to kind of consider when we see it, what the impact of it is.
Are you talking about related services providers?
Yes. So they sent us a related service provider who said for religious reasons she wasn't vaccinated. We said, we understand that you have to be vaccinated, because this was before the arbitration. I don't even know how the arbitration impacts providers. And she said, oh, okay, and she left. But I'm just wondering how they're communicating with these providers and if accommodations are going to be offered to providers as well. So we just basically told her she couldn't come in, she needed to be vaccinated, and the agency sent another provider. But, I don't know if we're doing it right or not.
I think that's an important caveat you put there, Stacy. The agency sent another provider. I think we need to make sure that students, particularly our students with disabilities, get the services that they are entitled to, and we shouldn't, not complying with vaccine mandates is not an excuse to not provide the service.
And we can confirm on our end. I'm not sure how the agencies are being classified, but just a reminder that the agreement with the U of T, or the mandate for the vaccines for teachers and all DOE staff and contractors, goes into effect on the 27th. So it is possible that you may still be seeing unvaccinated individuals, just because there is that time before it goes into effect.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Stacy, is that should not happen post September 27th.
Right. I mean, she was really clear that she's not getting vaccinated.
Right. And
not
so
even by the 27th, that
right.
It's for religious belief, she's not getting
right.
vaccinated. And
so it makes you question, does that mean she go through the accommodation process with her agency and the agency accepted it, and therefore it's like she doesn't have to be vaccinated to be in your building? No, I hear you. I mean, these are the types of questions that we are just 100% correct in terms of how do you operationalize this, because now if she goes to another school, another charter school, is she bringing some sort of documentation? Because DOE is clearly not the one who is going to, I think if folks have read the order, you see there are lots of people covered by who has to be vaccinated. They are not all DOE employees at all, right? It's, there are many, especially now that they've going into, food service providers, that we have charters who are using third-party food service providers, right? Like those are not DOE employees. So there are going to be lots of questions on how you operationalize this. Stay
tuned. That's what webinars are made for. So with that, Yomika, I think it's worth transitioning over to our special guests.
All right, very good. We have some special guests today. We're thrilled to have to feature two schools that will be sharing some reflections on the guiding principles they're using to address student instruction and engagement for the upcoming year. I'm going to turn it right over to Ralph Rossi to introduce our first charter school presenter. Following that presentation, David Frank, will you introduce the next school presenter? All right.
Okay, so I'm happy to introduce Dr. Sean Larry Stevens from KIPP Albany Community Public Schools in Albany. That name is long because not long ago we put two education corporations together. One was KIPP Tech Valley, former name, and one was Albany Community Charter School. And now they're that one long KIPP name. Dr. Stevens is the Chief Academic Officer for the network of 4 schools in the Capital Region. And I'm excited to have him share his thoughts on how they prepared their staff to address what we know but haven't really tested are the learning gaps and losses from a year of online instruction, and find out what they're going to do to accelerate growth with their students, which of course we'll be interested in when we come for renewal. Dr. Stevens.
Good afternoon, everyone. I do apologize for the lag. As you can see, I'm in our schools right now making things happen. Thank you for the really quick intro. My name is Dr. Sean Larry Stevens. I am currently the Chief Academic Officer of KIPP Albany, also working on a global initiative with Kanye West to open up schools across the world, which I'm really excited about. And so, sorry, I'm literally just getting my bearings, and I know I have about 4 or 5 minutes. I want to share with you a little bit about the philosophy that we're taking here in KIPP Albany. And the academic priority that we do have this year is called Our Students Love to Learn Because We Do Too. And I wanted to ground all of our teachers and our leaders in this mindset of what does it mean to create world-class schools that are truly preparing our students for a choice-filled life. And so if we want to fulfill our mission, if we want to fulfill that mission, our students obviously can't be bored. And so this year we're cultivating this mindset of empowerment. We're cultivating a mindset of zest for learning, a mindset that is centered on supporting students through the productive struggle and the journey of learning, and viewing it more like an aspiration versus a destination, which is a phrase I use often when we talk about the diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism work that we do as educators as well. And so I came up with that phrase and the philosophy early on in the summer when I thought about what I wanted to launch our PD schedule, what I wanted our PD schedule to look like. And thinking about the last 18 months, knowing that our students were dispelled from the traditional brick and mortar environment of a classroom, I thought like we need to make sure that we are modeling for our students how excited we are to be here in this space together learning. And that starts from 2 spaces: the intellectual preparation that we're doing as educators and the professional development that we're putting our teachers in. And so from the start of August PD, we adapted the philosophy that every professional development session that teachers are going to be engaged in will be grounded in learning, will be grounded in actually them going through the productive struggle and the rigorous study of their own content areas in order to get better and become the intellectual geniuses in their areas for our students. And that goes into the second philosophy that we have, which is nothing is too rigorous for our students. And so we've created a new excellent teacher rubric that is grounded in the idea that when we establish rigorous standards that define what excellent teaching looks like for our teachers, that ultimately will trickle down to the experience that we want for our teachers to have with our kids. And so truly pushing them and believing in that we are not living in a space where we're watering down. We're not living in a space of unfinished learning. We're not living in a space of like, oh, our students haven't been here for the last 18 months and we need to scaffold more and we need to XYZ. No, we're actually means we need to put our foot to the pedal even more and rev up and make sure that we are always holding the highest bar for our students possible. And so the way we've done that, obviously, is thinking about our defining excellent teaching. We've created secondary leader cohorts for this year for the very first time, where professional development is going to be designed by me for all of our principals on a monthly basis and all of our assistant principals on a monthly basis, where they actually are going to be off campus engaging in the rigorous work of what it means to be an amazing instructional leader and also just an amazing human. And so thinking about our DEI work and our mission and all that we bring into our classrooms in terms of our identity. And we are rolling out that new rubric to all of 300 of our teachers in about 2 weeks. And so right now, our principals just went through extensive engagement with it. Our assistant principals are starting next week with it, and teachers will have an opportunity to engage with it the week after that. And so nothing's too rigorous for our kids, philosophy number 1. And we love to learn, our students love to learn because we do too. Thank you.
Should I introduce you, Ben, Yumika? Great. Well, thank you, Dr. Stevens. So I'm excited to introduce Ben Samuels-Callow from Creo College Prep in the Bronx. Ben is the founder and head of school for this 5 through 8 middle school, and they opened in 2019. Ben and his team are working extremely hard to set their students up for success in the upcoming school year, and he's here to share a few of the guiding principles that his staff will be using to improve student instruction and engagement. I also, if anyone is looking to see an amazing ELA program in action, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a better community-focused, culturally responsive program than at Creo College Prep. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Ben for his presentation.
Thank you so much, David. I'm Ben. I'm, as David said, founder head of school, and today I was also a substitute teacher for computer science. It's been a busy day. I'm at the opposite end of the spectrum from Dr. Stevens. We are not yet at full growth, and our school has a little under 300 kids. So we've never had a year without COVID, and so we are growing and changing and learning all the time in the midst of all of this. In terms of first principles for us at Creo, everything comes down to this. And so what Dr. Stevens was saying earlier really resonated with me. There are a lot of initiatives and a lot of rubrics and a lot of data trackers and all the good things we all do, but we always come back to this to ground ourselves because our kids deserve to be safe and they deserve to have interesting curriculum and content that's worthy of them. There are three things that I wanted to highlight that have worked well for us in terms of operationalizing Always Safe, Never Bored, besides everyone getting tattoos of this during PD, which maybe we'll do. The first one is something we branded as classroom competence. I spent the first 10 years of my life as an educator thinking about classroom management, and we've reframed that to talk about competence, putting it on the adults in the room. It's not about adults managing kids. It's about, are they competent? Are they, as Dr. Stevens says, the experts, we call them nerds, in their content, so that they have to do these things. These are baseline competence to get to the nerdy stuff before they can get into the really engaging work. And when you're talking about competence, and when you're talking about the position of power you have over kids, because we do as adults, we always want to ground ourselves in purpose over power. And so we think about classroom competence as three pieces that all have to exist, and we practice these separately with our teachers. And there's this pyramid or triangle, and the center of it is the idea of always safe, never bored. And the way you get there is a combination of relationships with the kids, which are more meaningful now than ever, worthwhile content, which is why we are really picky about the curricula that we source. And thank you, David, for the shout out to our ELA curriculum. We're in a pilot with Uncommon. I highly recommend their Reading Reconsidered curriculum. It's amazing. And then finally, we really simplified the what formerly known as classroom management. We took all of TLAC and all those great books, and we tried to really distill it down to make it really simple for our team. And we have this mantra of set, scan, and follow through. And so in the first few weeks of school, when we're trying to get our teachers used to being in classrooms again, our kids used to being in classrooms again, we want that consistency from every single room. So every teacher is practicing setting clear expectations and instructions, scanning to see if students are able to meet those, and then following through with our school's consistent systems when students do and don't act as their best selves. And by having this consistent language from classroom to classroom, we're middle school, our teachers move, our kids have 6 to 8 different teachers in a day. They went from being on Zoom in their bedroom to having these 8 different adults who come through. Having this level of consistency coupled with relationships, coupled with really interesting stuff to do once you listen to me as the adult, we think is really distilled what we would have done in past years in PD in lots of different complex ways. We tried to really simplify that and make it something that is a touchstone, and also something that experienced educators want to come back to and refine their skills, and brand new educators have a really simple, I'm working just on my set, I'm working just on my scan, I'm working just on my relationships with these students, and I can really focus in on where I'm trying to get better. The second big pillar for us is wellness. We have a dean of wellness at our school. Health and wellness is a core subject. It's been that way since we opened. It turned out to be really great to have that come through a pandemic, still coming through a pandemic. Our kids do yoga, mindfulness, exercise every day. Our dean of wellness also oversees our restorative practices. So the things that kids are learning when they're learning how to do breathing and self-soothing in yoga, that's a tool that they can use on their best days and on their worst days. And so this is something that's normal for our kids, and coming back into a building after being at home for a long time, finding opportunities and being creative about where we can find those opportunities. All of our teachers have learned some different stretches and breathing exercises they can use in breaks with kids. We've put breaks in between every single class, which elongated our schedule a little bit, but we've actually found our kids have stamina. Our adults, all of us had to get used to being in one place again for long periods of time, but our kids, by having this focus on wellness, by having nutritional food every day, by having yoga every day, our kids are really able to jump back in. We're just started our 3rd week of school, and dismissals in 2 minutes. And they've been here since 7:30. And so I'm not saying yoga caused that, but it's definitely part of the puzzle. And then in terms of, I think everyone probably has some version of this in their office, but just what we're doing to try to meet needs and think about, we could all just think about doing intervention all day long. And as Dr. Stevens said, we can't. We have to hit grade level content. We have to hit really rigorous grade level content, or our kids are never going to catch up. At the same time, some of our kids haven't been in a school building since 3rd grade. We start in 5th grade. So that's pretty profound leap to go from being a 3rd grader to being a 5th grade middle school student. So a couple of things we thought about. Number one, we have a dedicated reading class. So we have this wonderful ELA program, which I can send a lot of shine to because I have nothing to do with it except for cheering it on. But we also have a dedicated reading class. So for students who are in 5th and 6th grade who are either very, very low readers, new arrivals of the country, who are not able to necessarily access that novel-based curriculum at the highest level, we also have a dedicated reading class where they're working on phonics. And it looks a lot like what probably happens in your K-1, 2 classrooms if you're in elementary school. We do this in a cohort model. We do it with all the middle school trappings and age appropriate incentives, but it's doing that phonics work that makes sure, and we have rapid cycles. So kids actually graduate out of this program pretty quickly and come back to the really awesome ELA class. We moved Summer Academy to be during PE this year. So instead of fighting the inertia of July, we just had our kids come back. Our Summer Academy kids came back in August, and our most experienced teachers taught. And our newer teachers either assisted or observed those Summer Academy classes. And so it's kind of a 2-for-1, getting our team back on their feet. And then for our kids, from their perspective, some of our kids have been here for a month already. And so the team, I think of it like interval training. We kind of spun up. We did 2 hours of school, then we did 4 hours of school, then we did 6 hours of school. Now we're doing 9 hours of school. We had to kind of stretch ourselves to get back there. And then one last way we do that is we got rid of homework. We now have what we call active practice. So we have a period at the end of the day where our ELA and our math teams meet in the afternoon and develop a reteach plan for that day. And then kids, before they leave this building, get a second at-bat. It's basically what we would have assigned for homework in the past. But now that we have a very good idea of what our kids can do at home, we think that this is a more supportive and more equitable way to serve them.
All right, great, thank you. We'll open it up now for questions. Any questions for our presenters? And you can unmute yourselves and just ask your question.
I'll ask if you guys have any artifacts of any of those things that you'd be able to share. Please pass them along to us and we can make them available to folks. Those are just so many great, like, awesome sticky principles and, you know, cool things to consider. It'd be awesome.
I have a question about active practice, and then I have a question about Kanye West. So for both of you, I'm not passing up this opportunity. So active practice, as a parent who homework was a struggle, right? There were times where homework, you know, was the fight of the evening. How are parents receiving your active practice versus homework? What's been the response on that?
And I should not take the Kanye question. Okay. We have had. No, it's fine. It's probably better. We have had, I think, a lot of listening time with parents. So the actual time that got replaced with active practice came out of conversations when we were designing the school to have a like study hall period that was really intentional. So it wasn't a major shift because parents were used to, at least our founding parents, were used to their kids starting their homework at school. And so we said, we're just going to finish their homework at school. And now it's no longer homework. And for our newer parents, we really said, you know, we call it active practice, which comes from some educational book, you know, it's jargon, right? For parents, we call it tutoring. It's not really tutoring, it's applied practice, but that's what's understandable. And we say we offer small group tutoring, which does happen during that time for some kids. And we're really clear, like your kids aren't going to have homework. They also are in school from 7:30 to 4:45, and some of them until 5:30. So if you want me to monopolize more of your evening, I can come up with something, but I think we've probably more than met you halfway by having that long a day.
Thank you. Dr. Stevens, I have a question. Kanye West, say more. You can't just drop that gem and move on. No, sir.
You know, obviously because of NDAs, there's not too much I can say on screen. However, feel free to email me and we can chat about all the things. But I think it's no secret that Kanye West is engaging in educational pursuits globally, and I am a part of that.
That's awesome. I hope you, when you can say more, you do say more. That keep us all posted.
Yeah, I want to be as separate from it as possible, if you get my drift.
Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you both. A last call. Any more questions for either of the presenters?
I have one for Ben. Actually, we have a board chair that is a paramedic, and the masks make a big difference. Sometimes when there's a person who's in distress, and he understands that the infection rate is possibility is low, he'll take the mask down and he can watch the heart rate actually drop on the monitor. Is there anything with the mask in building relationships that you've been using that you could share with the other schools? Because, a teacher in a mask, student in a mask, as opposed to on the video, it is a different dynamic.
It's a great question. I wish I had a pithy answer for you. I think, like most things, as long as we're consistent about establishing it early, we find workarounds. So we have a lot of sign language at our school. We have a lot of interstitial time. So it's maybe hard to build relationships when you can't read facial expressions, but if you have a 10-minute break instead of a 2-minute passing period, we can accommodate some of those things. It's definitely harder. I'm having a heck of a time at Arrival because it's like between a hat and a mask and a hood, and it's hard to learn names as quickly as usual. That's been hard for relationships. But I think in terms of actual conversation, we've really tried to model for kids. And I've had to actually encourage teachers not to do, the pull away, because that's not modeling the best practice for kids. And I think everything just takes a little bit more time and intentionality, finding a better mask that fits your face. We're having kids try different cuts before we do a bulk order, so we can find ones that fit better. I had to shave my beard because I couldn't fit a mask over it. Those kinds of accommodations, but we haven't, I think, had like a revelatory experience of like, we can't feel each other through this mask. We've been able to make that part work.
Thanks.
Well, thank you again to our two presenters. This is wonderful. I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We have 10 minutes. I'm going to take that opportunity to ask one question. I'll put it out there for the entire group, and I'll start with a comment. We have in our local paper today here in Albany a school that has gone remote as a result of COVID cases. I guess rather than a question, I'll say to you, if schools are considering that, contemplating that, facing that, please reach out. Let us know at the association. We're very interested in how schools would be grappling with that, what you're considering for that, and also what you would need to help support that, particularly in terms of advocacy and outreach. So please do not hesitate to reach out. If anybody wants to raise that and discuss it now, we do have a few more minutes left of webinar. I will open it up for that. Other than that, we'll wait a beat and see if anybody jumps on that one. If not, we'll wrap up and we'll see you next month.
Yumika, I won't address that directly, but we have had another issue come up, which is for students who do need to quarantine or who do unfortunately get sick. Just a reminder that there is the homebound instruction, which in some cases, and we've had this discussion with our friends from the DOE, is provided by the district, but is still an obligation of the charters. It has a different flavor and requirements than alternative instruction for discipline. And so people should just not forget about that. If you do have to send students home and you aren't set up for sort of a full remote option, you still have some obligations as a charter school.
Although regarding homebound instruction, it's only up to 2 hours a day. And we anticipate that there may be situations over this next coming year where parents who feel they can't send their students to school may challenge the equity of homebound instruction through a commissioner's decision. And so, although certainly homebound instruction is an option, we would encourage all of our schools to think about the need to provide students with a full set of intervention throughout the day, which schools are getting a lot of money through CARES Act for, that certainly homebound instruction might be an option, but then how do you supplement that to ensure that students are getting the interventions that they need in order to ameliorate the effects of the pandemic? And that might include supplementing that with remote instruction as well. And I can let you know the department is thinking about whether or not the current regulations pertaining to homebound instruction are sufficient.
Thank you both for that. Very helpful. All right, I think that wraps it up for today. Thank you, everyone. Again, special thanks to our presenters for today. Always good to see our authorizers as well. Everyone, hope your the next month goes well for school, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.